Welcome back, fellow Illumineers! It is that time again. A little bit of a sad time, though. Happy but sad. I'm happy to be here with you all. Do not get me wrong. I'm happy to be here talking about Wilds Unknown Lorcana Limited. Your drafts, your sealed games, getting you ready for your Wilds Unknown pre-release event. I'm a little sad because if you watched yesterday's episode, at the end I mentioned we were going to have Liam from the Illumineers on today. But unfortunately, we were supposed to record this yesterday. It was the only day that it really worked for the both of us to record. And unfortunately, my daughter, you might have heard if you've been on a few of the episodes, or if you've watched a few of the episodes, she has autism. Love my daughter. She's amazing. But there are many challenges, and bedtime is definitely one of them. That's about the time that we were going to record, and it just didn't work out. So, unfortunately, Liam couldn't be here, but huge love to you, Liam. You are fantastic. You're an amazing ambassador, you and Aaron both, for this game, for this community. You are always putting yourself out there. I can't imagine just wrapping my head around all the work that you do, and to still be such a gracious and incredible human being. You're amazing. So thank you, Liam. Give some love to Liam in the comments, please. Make sure you go out there. If you're not subscribed to the Illumineers, what the heck are you doing? You can't be here watching this trash and not be checking out the Illumineers. The trash being me, not the guests. But we shall get on with it. We shall trudge ahead. Let me just say, because I keep forgetting to say this, but it really begs repeating. And since I'm here solo today, I've got slightly more time than we might normally have. But we will dive into it quickly, I promise. Which is just to say that I really need your help in growing this community, in growing the limited space in Lorcana. I have no intent or desire to be a full-time content creator, to be, an official content creator. But I am passionate about making limited happen with Lorcana, about growing the spotlight for it, about growing the interest in it in your own communities. If you love limited, probably you experience something similar to me, which is that sometimes it's hard to get any limited games outside of set release. We have this amazing window every few months of the pre-release, of the set release, where we get to play limited and have a lot of fun. That's my favorite time of any set. But then the interest kind of wanes. And it's, I think, down to, for me, the biggest thing that I can pinpoint to and something that I'm trying to champion in my own community is comfort with and confidence in playing limited. That's why I try to share this out. That's why I put this out there for you all, which is I firmly believe the more comfortable and confident you are playing anything, a board game, a card game, just in life in general, in your work, in your personal life, the more comfortable and confident we are in a thing, we tend to enjoy it more. Go figure, we enjoy the things that we're good at. So, my ask to you is, please, as best you can, share this out. Let your family and friends know. Subscribe, like, comment, all that good stuff to kind of feed the algorithm beast, as it were. You'll notice I've got funding turned off or monetization turned off. I'm not looking to cash in on this. I just want more voices out there for Lorcana Limited, more ears out there listening and finding something for themselves that they love about this. And so as we grow this out, then we bring it to Ravensburger and say, hey, there's this great love of limited. Obviously, you support it. You're not going to not support it. They love it when we open product. But we need to support it more. There's so much more opportunity for growth in the limited space in terms of our designs of the sets, in terms of how we market limited, in terms of the events that we've got for limited. Why do we have to stop at pre-releases? Why are there no equivalent to set championships, kind of the next level of limited events? Why aren't we featuring them more prominently at DLCs, even in the side events, right? We've got these big main sign events on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for Constructed. Why don't we have a high-stakes side event at a DLC for limited? Start there. And then we can grow from there and eventually maybe get a limited DLC proper, which would be incredible. So I've got big dreams and big aspirations in terms of the limited space. Not for me. I'm not really comfortable in that space, but I'm out here because I want to see Limited grow. So I need your help in that capacity. If you're liking this content and you're not subscribed, please subscribe as much as you can. Help me with the algorithm. Like, comment, share it out. Again, if you love Limited, that's the goal. So that's my plea for this run around. I might try and mention it on my wrap-up video, but I just know I keep forgetting to mention that because that's not really what I'm here for. That's not really why I want to do this, but I know that it's necessary. So here we are. There's my rambling for today. Let's get into these cards and talk about 5-drops. And really, this is going to be such a relief. I was really looking forward to talking this with Liam because this set, Wilds Unknown, is really low powered. You've watched up until now. If you have watched up until now, you've seen 1-drops, 2-drops, 3-drops, 4-drops, and they've all been underpowered relative to what we've kind of grown accustomed to over recent sets. Whispers in the Well and Winterspell were pretty high powered. Limited sets, especially Whispers in the Well. I really enjoyed it for that. But I also love the challenge of what I would refer to as a popper set. It's not my term. It's mentioned far and wide in the TCG space. We have Prince sets and popper sets. Prince sets are bomb heavy, high strength, high ceiling sets. And then popper sets are kind of more average cards, right? A lot more C's, a lot more C pluses, right? You'll notice that we're pretty much capping at B's. I think we've had 1 A so far in all the cards from 1 through 4. So that tells you that this is a relative popper set. Now, spoiler alert for tomorrow, you're probably going to see a similar thing there, but today only, in the 5-drops, I think we're going to have quite a few high-powered cards, which then is going to give us a kind of interesting thought to think in terms of if all of the power is relegated to the 5-drop space, how does that influence our deck building decisions, our gameplay decisions, all of that? I don't know if I'm going to talk about that today as we go. I don't know if I'm going to talk about that in my wrap-up video or if this needs its own dedicated video. I don't think I have the time for that, but I'd love to. So we'll see how that develops, but I think it's an interesting question. I'd love to hear from you as well, what your thoughts are of the impact of so much strength relegated to just the 5-drop spot in Limited for Wilds Unknown. All right. Without further ado, let's dive into it with kicking it back to past Heath to walk us through how we rank these cards. If you've already seen this, you know to skip ahead a couple minutes to get back to the cards. Take it away, Heath. All right, so what are we talking about in terms of these rating systems? How are we rating these cards today? We're talking about a scale from A through F. I'm going to be giving plus or minuses for A through C to give a little bit of nuance, a little bit of leveling to it, but we're going to be talking about A through F. I'm going to be speaking to these in terms of draft picks, but for my sealed brethren, I want you to think about this and interpret this as what are my auto includes when I see them in my pool, down to what are the cards that I might want to be cutting from my sealed pool. A picks are going to be your bombs. First pick, you see it in a pack, you're slamming it down. You're really lucky if you see more than one of these in a pack because they're so slim. Most sets have 5, maybe 6 of these in the entire set. These are the cards that you may end up wanting to build your whole deck around because they're so impactful. Your Bs are your foundation of a winning deck. Yes, the bombs are more powerful, but again, they're few and far between. So really, it's the Bs that you're relying on to build a winning deck. You might even say that you can look at a deck and see how it's going to perform based on the number of Bs. These are your solid removal, your solid characters, the things that are going to impact the game heavily, but maybe don't rise to the level of a bomb. These you're going to want to find in your first 4 picks. There are some sets where these are slim enough that you're probably talking realistically top 2 or 3 picks, but hopefully you can find these in your top 4 picks. All right, your C are your filler cards, from the top C plus being highly playable down to C minus being I might want to cut these cards. These are your role players. These are the cards that, okay, maybe they're probably not drawing a card, they're probably not removal unless it's really bad removal. These are your role players. These are the subpar vanillas. These are your average bodyguards like we see here. These are the type of cards that you're gonna play in your deck, but you're hoping to slim these down as much as possible. Your D cards are the cards you're hoping not to include in your deck. These are the cards you're gonna find at the end of the pack. These are the cards that ideally are going to be inkable, because if they are sync to the level of being this bad and they're uninkable, they should probably just be F. These are typically the cards that are referred to as being niche playable. 10% of the time they might do something very effective, 5% of the time they might be great, but the rest of the time you just want to ink them. Which leaves our F, which is your uninkable, just trash. Stay far away from these, don't even look at them. Typically, these are going to be your high-cost uninkables that might just rot in your hand for the entirety of the game and aren't significant enough to be worth the risk, right? So stay far away from these, burn them on sight. And we're back. All right, no more jokes about Heath presenting the rankings. Let's dive right into it. We're going to start with Prince Eric, Noble Swordsman. He is a 5-cost inkable, 6/7, 1 lore vanilla. Oh my goodness. If you have watched any of these, you know that I get really excited by beefy vanillas. Overrate or top-rate vanillas. It's not sexy, but it is fantastic. I mean, Prince Eric is pretty sexy, but it is a fantastic card, a fantastic rate. Not too long ago, our vanillas were 5/6s, 6/5s. It wasn't uncommon for 5/5s, but 5/5 2 lores as well. So 6/7 just absolutely trumps all of them. And most importantly, I love at this level having the 6/7 versus the 7/6. And please don't get at me with the alpha. Are we in alpha now? Whatever. Gen alpha 6/7 thing. Anyways, so I love the 7 willpower because 6 strength is enough against almost every character in this set. 6 strength is enough, and 7 willpower means that there's a very good chance that Prince Eric survives one challenge to challenge again. And you know I'm always looking for those 2-for-1s. You know I'm always looking for those card advantage. Card advantage isn't just relegated cards that say draw a card, right? They also come from bodies like this that are so efficient and so overstated relative to their cost that there's almost no chance that they don't get a 2-for-1. And if they're just trading 1-for-1, there's a good chance that they're trading up into a 6-drop. Right? So Prince Eric is fantastic. He's definitely in that B territory. B to B minus. I think you could be conservative and say B minus. There's going to be a lot of strong cards in this, so it's entirely possible Prince Eric drops down, but you're going to be happy with him no matter what. Dolores Madrigal hears everything. She's an inkable 5/5 2 lore. When you play this character, look at chosen opponent's hand. That's not a nothing ability, right? Being able to see what your opponent is likely to do on their next turn can be helpful to try and decide what's going to be my best course of action. However, there's 2 problems with that. One, by the time you play Dolores, chances are they have 1 or maybe 2 cards left in their hand. Actually, there's 3 problems, because 2, they're still drawing a card, so you still don't know definitively what they might do on their next turn, right? That other card has bearing. And 3, by the time you play out a 5-drop, chances are there's not a lot you can do relative to that information. You could challenge or not challenge, quest or not quest, basically decide if you're exerting your characters or not, but it's not like you could say, ooh, I should have played this card from my hand, knowing now what I know about my opponent's hand. So it's too late to play anything else unless it's a song that you can sing. But it does at least give you information on whether you should challenge, quest, etc. Right? So it's not no information, but it's still not great information. So really I would treat this as a vanilla 5/5 2 lore with just a little added, right? She's going to be above a vanilla, but not much more than that. So where's the vanilla 5/5 2 lores now, right? Because we've had an abundance of them in the past. If you remember in Fable, I think we had 5 of them, which was ridiculous. But they're serviceable. Even now, even with the upgrade stat lines, we've got like 6/5 2 lores that are now kind of the new vanilla stat line. And as we've seen with 1 lore, Prince Eric at a 6/7. So it's not necessarily bad rate, but it's just not where we want to be anymore. So I think in that C to C minus territory is a reasonable place to put kind of the 5/5 2 lore vanillas, which Dolores is going to be right aligned with, again, just slightly above a vanilla stat line. Woody Jungle Guide, uninkable 1/5 2 lore with shift 3. Whenever this character quests draw a card, then you may play a character with the cost 2 or less for free. Your other toy characters get +1 willpower. Let's get a couple things straight. Hopefully by the time You have Woody out on the board. You don't really have any 2-cost or less characters to play. Hopefully at that point you're kind of stacking up your higher cost characters. But if you happen to have one sticking around in your hand and don't need it for ink, getting a free character's not bad. They're not going to be very impactful by this point in the game, but it's certainly not a bad thing. And your other Tory characters getting +1 willpower, we've established many times up until now. There's just not enough playable common and uncommon toys for this to be that relevant. You might have one other character on the board that gets +1 willpower, which again, isn't nothing, but that's a maybe. So you pretty much have to look at that as a nothing, right? Look at that as blank, collect on it, be happy if you get a benefit from it, but assume it's blank in terms of how we evaluate this card. Nevertheless, a 1/5/2 lore for 5 that gets to draw a card on quest, that's pretty good. Now, that being said, a 1/5/2 lore for 5 body is really underpowered relative to the stat lines that we're expecting at this point. So chances are you're only going to quest with it once. So the question is, how would I feel about a 1/5/2 lore draw a card for 5 cost uninkable? And the answer is not very good. So you really have to get a second card out of this for it to be good. And the shame is that I want to give this a really good rating, but they just really understated it. A significant understatement. I know for Constructed, they were trying to balance it out with the other abilities, and mostly the second line, right? You can play a character with cost 2 or less for free. In a Constructed format, I can see that being potentially very good. I haven't practiced any of the Constructed format yet, so I don't know how good. I feel like the toys aren't going to work, but that's another matter for another time. So I understand how they have to balance this for Constructed, but we are only talking about Limited here. And for Limited, I think the chances of there's just not enough bodyguards in this set. There's no big bodyguards. We've got a couple of small ones. So this isn't really going to survive more than the one turn. So it is a 5 cost uninkable 1/5/2 lore draw card. And a delayed draw card. You don't even get it right away. Result of which is, I don't think this is very good. I wanted to love this, but I think this is probably like a C+, maybe even a C. And I wouldn't fault you for making an argument for an F, which is to say it drops down so far that it skips the D's and goes straight into F. I don't think it is that. I think it is still playable because you got a 2 lore, 5 willpower draw card. That's not great for 5, but it's still a lot of good things happening. So as a result, I think it's still in the playable territory and relatively playable, but my gosh, like a 3/5/2 lore wouldn't have been too much to ask, would it? Especially at uninkable. All right, Bashful, riding the rails, inkable 3/6/2 lore evasive. This is, we had Lumpy last set, which was a 5 cost 6/5/2 lore evasive at common. Obviously, that was, that was for 6. Sorry, it wasn't for 5. So that was for 6. So we're effectively trading 2 stat line pips, right? We gain a willpower, but we lose 3 strength. So for 1 cost, that's a valuable trade-off, right? Usually 2 stat pips per ink is a pretty standard trade-off. And for me, on a 2 lore questing evasive, I want it as cheap as possible. Like, I love my 3 cost 1/3/2 lore evasive. Love. But the fact that I'm paying 2 more ink isn't necessarily a problem, because I got 6 willpower now. So damage is not getting rid of Bashful. We know the Swarm card is 2 strength or less on default, so it's not getting rid of it easily. Like, obviously, it's got the Dragonfire kind of ability if you can put 2 cards in the discard. But other than that, there's really almost nothing getting rid of this easily. Now let's talk about the evasive answers in this set. We've got Syndrome, which is a 4/3. That's not taking this out. We've got Todd, we're going to see in a second, which is a 5/4. It's not taking it out in one shot, but they'll eventually trade with each other if you're really desperate. Not that you want to be challenging with Todd. You've got Angus, the horse, which is give something evasive. Now that can definitely pair with a larger body to take out Bashful. So that's relevant. So I'd say Angus is the first relevant piece. Then we've got Pegasus, which is the 6-cost 6/7, which we're going to talk about tomorrow. Right? That answers it cleanly, though it's one turn later. And then we've got the item that we saw with Sailor, which is the 3-cost uninkable item that gives evasive. So there's a few evasive answers. There's not really much in the way of removal answers other than the Swarm, and that one requires a little setup to make work. But there's a few evasive answers that'll deal with it. That being said, my instinct is that this is going to be fairly resilient. This is going to be fairly hard to deal with. So as a result, being a 2-lore questing, 6 willpower, evasive for 5, I've got this in kind of the B plus territory. I think decidedly better than Prince Eric, but I don't think it gets to the realm of B plus to A minus territory just because there's a decent amount of answers. And I'm talking about it common and uncommon, by the way. Once we start getting into rare, obviously there's other things to consider. But this, I think, is going to bear repeating a couple of times in the 5 drops. So let's just get it out of the way now, and hopefully I don't repeat myself too much. Which is, I think, in spite of what I said about this being a pauper set and being relatively low powered, I don't think, and Knive will be the best answer for this. If anyone's not familiar with Knive's Nerd Corner, he always comes out with a good primer for every limited set, or for every set for limited before it comes out. You should watch out for that in the coming days. But he usually goes over the data. How many evasives per set? How many bodyguards per set? What does the card draw situation look like? And I'm only thinking of this anecdotally. I haven't actually looked at the numbers. But just instincts are telling me that based on everything that I've seen, that the evasive ecosystem has never been more healthy in any set. Which is to say, there's a lot of strong evasives, but there's a lot of strong evasives, which means that they kind of self-control each other. The challenge before we had is there was only a couple of strong evasives, so like if you got one of those, there was a lot lower chance that your opponent would have an answer for them. Whereas between all the answers for evasives and all the strong evasives themselves, I think it's going to be harder to just rely on, hey, I've got one strong evasive and I just quest out with that for the rest of the game and there's nothing you can do about it. I think there's going to be a lot of evasive play, which I like, right? I didn't love the fact that, you could just have the Peter Pan in the last set, the 1/3 2-lore for 3, and just there wasn't much that your opponent could do about it. It was hard to have an answer to it. So I'm excited about the fact that there is an abundance of strong evasives in this set. I think we'll all have access to some strong evasives, which I think is a healthy way to be. Alright, Mrs. Incredible, super stretchy, inkable, 5/6/1 lore. At the start of your turn, you may choose one. This character gains evasive until the start of your next turn, which is always key. Or this character gets +1 lore this turn. This is a version of Todd that we had from last set, right? Todd could give any character evasive, could give himself +1 lore, but he was a 4-cost 2/4. Right? This is a 5-cost 5/6. Now that had 2 lore, so that could quest for 2 or 3. Mrs. Incredible can only quest for 1 or 2, respectively. But I really like Mrs. Incredible. I don't, mind that it's just her that gets evasive as opposed to Todd. I should give it to anyone. I think Todd was incredibly powerful, but I think Mrs. Incredible is still very strong. I think overall the flexibility is great. I still think that's probably not above Bashful, but it's in that range. I wouldn't fault you for taking her above Bashful, just being rare and harder to find. You've also got the super synergies, though I guess Bashful has the dwarf synergies, but as you know, I do not believe in the dwarf synergies, whereas I actually think in spite of the low frequency of supers, because there's so many that are playable, I've got like 6 or 7 commons and uncommon supers that are playable, that I think the incredible, or the super synergy might be the most reliable of the lot. I still don't think it's very reliable or going to be very consistent, but I think of all of them, it's probably going to be the most consistent. Maleficent, Imperious Traveler, inkable, 3/5 2 lore. Whenever this character quests, if you played another character this turn, you may exert chosen opposing character. As we've established many times now with these travelers that require a character to have been played when you trigger their ability, that's very, 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 very likely to happen in Limited, right? It is very uncommon that the top card of your deck is not going to be a character. And even if it is, that you don't at least have a character in your hand. So, for the most part, it's fairly safe to say that you're going to be able to trigger this as long as Maleficent is around. and being able to exert an opposing character. If you can construct your board state, construct your deck in a way that is good with control, you can completely lock out your opponent with an ability like this. Because every turn they play a character, and if you can just exert it before they ever get a chance to quest with it, and challenge with a stronger character that sticks around so that you can challenge the next character they play next turn, you're kind of always getting this 2-for-1, so that you're always having more characters than them, which means you're never running out of kind of fuel to challenge their latest character. You're going to be in a really strong position. So an ability like this is very strong. We had some abilities that you exerted the character to exert the opposing character. They were always relatively strong, but on relatively weak bodies. Maleficent now is a 3/5 with this ability. And you get to quest for 2 in the process. You don't have to exert for the ability. So all that combines to, I think, a pretty impactful card. There is going to be situations where this is not impactful at all. Where their board state is just too strong, and maybe you get this off once. And that's not bad, right? You're probably going to get an advantage out of this. You're going to exert something they don't want to exert otherwise. You're going to get an advantageous challenge on it. Great. But then, there's going to be plenty of board states where then she's just eliminated and it was a one-time effect. But if you can manage that board state and work towards it, knowing that this is in your hand and this is coming out, then it could be oppressive. So as a result, I think you've got a balance between the floor, which is you get this off once and it's not that impactful. It's still just a 3/5 body. And the ceiling, which is, it is a 3/5 body, which is much harder to remove than the 2 3s and 2 2s we've had with exert abilities in the past. And, it's potentially very oppressive. So as a result, it's hard to say that this rises to the level of a bashful, a 3/6 2-lore evasive, but I think it's going to be very strong. I think it's definitely in that B territory. Maybe even that's pushing bashful up in that B+ that I said he wasn't, but very strong. I'm going to be very happy to play Maleficent. Mordu, Savage, Cursed Prince, Inkable 8/8 3-lore. Now you say, 5-cost Inkable 8/8 3-lore, what the heck? There's a couple downsides. Small, minor downsides. When you play this character, exert all your characters not named Mordu. Your characters not named Mordu can't ready at the start of your turn. Notably, there's just the 3/2 rush for 2? That is another Mordu, I think? Question mark? Regardless, there isn't enough for it to say anything other than all your other characters are exerted when this comes into play and can't be ready. Now, as you play new characters on new turn, you'll have them ready when they come out, but then subsequently, if you exert them, they're not readying again. Now, this reminds me very much of Arthur in the first, I think it was Arcasia's Island, the first multicolored set, the blue steel one. And I can't remember the stat lines, but it was just really overstated compared to its cost. But it made you discard a card every turn, right? And so it's like, oh no, it wasn't discard. It was that you couldn't draw. Effectively like discarding, but you just couldn't draw, right? I was like, wow. My argument was, you don't really need to draw. Well, this is out on the board. They have to deal with it. And by the time they deal with it, they've probably invested, 2 to 3 cards into dealing with it, which you've then gotten back in not being able to draw. So you're kind of at parity in terms of card draw. But meanwhile, you've been questing. They've been working hard and playing suboptimally to try and deal with Arthur, etc. I don't think he played out quite as well as I rated him, but I think he played out well enough that he was worth including in your decks. I feel like Mordu is going to be more cumbersome still. I think that there's definitely angles where you can play around that and not get as impacted by it. But I fear that it is going to be way too cumbersome and thus more of a trap than anything. So I think he's definitely has potential to be playable. But I think on the whole, he's more likely to be a trap than anything, which for me, I think qualifies as a D. Normally, if something's a trap, like a hard trap, I want you to steer far away from it. I would put it into F even if it's inkable. But I think there are going to be board states where Mordu is going to be worth playing. That, when you can put down an 8/8 3-lore character, if there's a board state where that's going to work, great. Just be very cautious with him. Don't just throw him down thinking, oh, he's such a beast, it's worth throwing him down for. No. Where I think you're going to want him is if you've had a bit of like a series of blows traded back and forth, and you've whittled down each other's board states fairly well, such that you're not at risk of them necessarily winning in the next couple of turns, and you're down to maybe one character. It's like, okay, if one character of mine stays exerted, and I could play Mordu, and then next turn I play the next character, and it's really not a couple of turns before I have to worry about these new characters getting affected by Mordu, then we might be in business. But if you've got even 2 or more characters that you're going to lock down with this, I don't think it's worth it at that point. It's going to be hard to say. I feel like this is going to be a very case-by-case basis, but I don't want you potentially ruining your entire game because you get excited about the 5-cost 8/8. Alma Madrigal, Keeper of the Flame, Inkable 2/6, 2 lore with Shift 3. When you remove 1 or more damage from one of your characters, you may exert chosen opposing character. This is the payoff card for the Madrigal synergy. That being said, I just don't believe in it. I know Sailor had a lot of positive things to say about it in our 3-drop video. Personally, I don't believe in it. I don't believe the density is high enough to think that you're going to get many cards that are going to move damage and get the payoff for it. And I don't think that the payoff is strong enough to warrant playing it. Like, compare this to Maleficent. The hoops that you have to jump through for this to work versus the hoop of just playing a character and questing. Maleficent, you play a character in quest, you get an exert. This you have to find and use and have use for the damage moving or removing characters or abilities. Night and day. Night and day. So as such, for me, she is an absolute D. She's a 2 lore 6 willpower character. So you're never going to put her below a D, but she's not particularly strong. All right, Luisa Madrigal, Confident Climber, Inkable 6/4, 1 lore, Shift 3, with 1 ink, an ability to pay 1 ink. You do not have to exert. Pay 1 ink as many times as you want. Move up to 1 damage from chosen character of yours to this character. Then, if this character has 3 or more damage, move all damage from this character to chosen opposing character. My goodness. Luisa is a removal machine. She's not just an easy piece of removal. She's not like Belle we had in the past, where it's just, get 3 damage on a character, play Belle, move the damage over, you're very happy. You got a 4/4/2 lore character to show for it. Luisa is not that, but Luisa is potentially more powerful. I think this is another one. We talk about floors and ceilings, where the floor is lower, but the ceiling is much higher. So, notably, if you get 3 damage on Luisa herself, you do not need to move any damage from another character. You pay 1, trigger this, move up to 1 damage, so 0, or 1, I'll talk about that in a second, and then you move the damage off of Luisa. So if you just put 3 damage on herself, great. There is a decent amount of common and uncommon 3/6s in this set, so that's going to stack up very well for Luisa, right? So that's first of all. The second thing is, if you've got other bodies in front of her, and you've got some spare ink, you can just, one at a time. Hey, pay 1, move 1, pay 1, move 1, pay 1, move 1. On the third one, it will trigger and send it over to one of your opponent's characters. So you can just leave her back, not expose her, and just funnel that as long as you've got spare ink. 3 ink, though, starts to become a little challenging. It's still great rate. Like, think about, we're paying 3 ink for 2 damage with Merida's Bow. This is 3 ink for 3 damage and healing one of your characters in the process. So shifting 3, right? So it's a good rate, but still I'd be cautious about just kind of relying on that exclusively, because there's big bodies, so shifting 3 might not even be significant enough, but chances are 3 damage is going to do some things, right? Now, I mentioned a 4th damage. This is actually something that I didn't realize, is that this effect will kind of fully realize before Luisa recognizes the damage. What do I mean by that? If Luisa has 4 damage on her, you can move 1 damage. Googly Glimmers, if you're out there and you see this, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm fairly confident, based on some questions that I've asked. You can move the 4th damage, and then move that all off before Luisa kind of registers the damage and is banished herself. So this is where you can actually shift 4 damage if Luisa has 3 damage on herself. Though it has to be exactly 3, because you can't kind of quickly pay for 2 and move 2 over. No, as soon as the third hits, it will trigger the ability. But if she's already got 3, she's still on the board, and you move a 4th, well then. And if you have some way of giving her higher willpower, and you can get her up to 1 less than her total willpower. Let's say, in Constructed, she's, at Rapunzel's Tower that gives 3 willpower. You get her up to 6 damage, then move a 7th over, and move the 7 over. Whew! Oh boy. But this isn't Constructed. So, there is things that give willpower. I think Andy's Room gives 1 willpower. So there's potential there. But let's just rate her on her own, right? All of that amounts to heck of a card, right? Pretty decent stats for the body, all on her own. Completely serviceable 1-drop for a shift target. And this is something where I might be interested in shifting, right? If on turn 4 I can shift for 3, challenge in to a 3 strength character, and then move the damage immediately onto my opponent's character, that's when it's worth going down the card, right? Because you lose a card when you shift. That's when it's worth it. Right? So the fact that the 1-drop is serviceable on its own, absolutely playable, and it's a very cheap shift, 3 costs to shift. There's a lot to love about Louisa. She is absolutely... Okay. Don't be nervous. I am very nervous about this card. It is an inkable action. Search your deck for a princess card, reveal that card, draw players, put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. If you have 2 or more 7-dwarf characters in play, draw 2 cards and gain 2 lore. Someone is going to try and make this work. Oh my goodness, someone is going to try and make this work. It is not going to work. And when I say not, I mean, I use that a lot. It's slight hyperbole. In the infinite games out there that all of you are playing, someone at some point is going to make this work. And if you are across the table from that, you're going to feel fairly bad about it. But they're still paying 5 for it. They're effectively paying 5 to draw 3 cards and gain 2 lore. That's fine. That's good. Even very good, but it's not game breaking, and for the amount of hoops that you have to jump through to try and make that work, it's just not happening. I firmly don't believe in this 7-dwarf synergies. Play the 2-drop, play the 5-drop. They're both exceptional. Even play the 3-drop, it's fine. But unless you've got a seal pool with just a high density of the great ones, don't be playing the other ones that are suboptimal. All right, it is. I'm going to qualify this one as one of those inkable Fs. It is most certainly a trap. Please don't fall for it. Todd, Nimble Fox, inkable 5/4, 2 lore, evasive. What more do you want me to say? All we can say is this better or worse than Bashful? For me, on my 2 lore questing evasives, I would rather have more willpower and make sure that it survives longer than more strength. The one advantage of having more strength is that you could potentially challenge it to something with evasive, but then at 4 willpower, if you're challenging to something that needs 5 strength, chances are it's trading with it, and I don't really want to be trading with my 2 lore evasive unless it's into another Todd. So yeah, I'd rather Bashful, but they're both exceptional. I'm so sorry if you have to choose between them in a draft pack. Oh, that's a painful decision to make. Congratulations to my neighbor. The Witch, Wily Woodcarver, inkable 4/6/2 lore. Whenever this character is challenged, each opponent loses 1 lore. That's impactful, but not so impactful that I'm that excited about it. So it's again slightly better than a 5/5/2 lore because 4/6 stat line effectively the same. So the question is, would I rather my opponent lose a lore or look at my opponent's hand? I'd definitely rather my opponent lose a lore. So I will put this above Dolores, but it's not much more than a vanilla. Lord MacGuffin, uninkable 6/4/2 lore. This character may enter play exerted to deal 3 damage to chosen damaged character. Again, would it be so much to ask to just be chosen character? I know that's not Emerald's thing. I know Emerald's thing is damaged characters, but it's just so weak. By the time you get out Lord MacGuffin, chances are there's a damaged character on the board. I've said this many times. It is amazing to me how many board states in Limited of games that I've seen where there isn't that many damaged characters on board. We tend to trade with each other a lot because we don't want to give our opponent an advantageous challenge, so we don't really offer that up very often. The thing is, when there is a damaged character, usually they only have 1 or 2 willpower left, right? So is the 3 damage even really doing much? It's making sure, now I will say it's making sure the job's done, because chances are 3 damage is going to take out anything that's already damaged. right? The chances of it having more than 3 willpower left after already being damaged is pretty slim. So this is definitely finishing the job. But is it kind of overkill? And thus, are you paying more than you should for the ability to finish off one of your opponent's damaged characters, right? This might as well just say banish chosen damaged character. I mean, 5 cost 6/4 2 lore is fine, right? We're equivalent to our 4/6 or our 5/5 2 lore. As I've mentioned before, I'd probably rather, and definitely rather, a 4/6 2 lore than a 6/4, especially on a character that I'm intending to put into play exerted, which means my 3-drop 4 strength characters can take it out. All that being said, I don't love it. I still think it's playable. I still think a 6/4 2 lore body is serviceable, and the option to take out one of my opponent's damaged characters, I think is worth it. The fact that it's a May is obviously fantastic. Does not have to enter play exerted. You can just stand it up. I think it's playable. I don't think it's great. I would probably take it over the Witch, but if my uninkable count was too high, I would happily cut Lord MacGuffin. Lord MacGuffin is in that kind of C- to C territory if you're being generous. Alright, Donald Duck, Distracted Traveler, Inkable, 3/6 2 lore. Whenever this character quests, if you played another character this turn, each opponent chooses and discards a card. I was very low on the 6-drop characters that we had in the last set that made your opponent discard a card, right? As I said, and I think very fairly, by the time you get out a 6-drop, are they even going to have a card left in hand? If you are on the play, probably. If you are on the draw, probably not. Whereas the 5-drop, so that's on play, right? Whereas this is on quest. So they're both kind of happening on turn 6. So that really still applies here. The great thing about Donald Duck is on turn 5, I've got a pretty good chance of being able to estimate whether my opponent will still have a card in hand, right? When it's on play, it's kind of either they do or they don't. And if they don't, that's problematic, right? I'm overpaying for what was then a vanilla character. Whereas Donald, if I'm going into my turn 5 and I see that they have 2 cards in hand, well, they're going to go up to 3, probably ink 1, play 1, still have a card left in hand. I'm happy. If they instead ink their higher cost character and play 2 lower cards to avoid the discard from Donald, I'm still probably happy because they had to play suboptimally and I didn't have to deal with that higher cost character. So if they've got 2 cards in hand, I'm feeling good. If they've got 1 card in hand, I'm not feeling good. I'm hoping I have another card to play and can ink Donald and play that other card instead. Because if they've got 1 card in hand, chances are they're going to go up to 2 cards, ink 1, play 1, and then have an empty hand. So you really want your opponent to have 2 or more cards in hand when you play Donald Duck. But this is where you can anticipate that, right? Whereas the 6-drops, you just were kind of hoping. Also, I think they were both uninkable, right? So you didn't have a choice in the matter. You were working towards those whether you liked it or not, whereas Donald is inkable. So I like Donald way more than those. He's still a high-cost character that's looking for them to discard once, right? And chances are he's not going to be able to do it again. Now he says 6 willpower, so I say chances are, but I don't think it's like high chances are he won't be able to do it again. If they've, just been focusing on drawing cards early, and they've, got 3 or 4 cards in hand by the time you play Donald, and you can manufacture a way to get him to quest twice, brilliant. Then at that point, he's been a bomb for you. But that doesn't make him a bomb. He can be one, right? So, all in all, for me, I think I'd rate Donald somewhere in the C+ territory. I think C+ is perfectly fair for him. If you rate him as a B-, not going to shame you for it, but I think for me, I've got him in that C+ territory. And again, I want my opponent to have 2 or more cards in hand when I play Donald Duck. Merida, Gifted Archer, Inkable, 3/6 2 lore with Shift 3. While this character is exerted, whenever an opposing character challenges, you may deal 1 damage to the challenging character. So effectively, she exists as a 4/6 against your opponent when they go to challenge her. Because they're going to challenge Merida before they challenge anything else. So she's a 5-cost 4/6 2 lore. Right? That is the vanilla stat line. Now, you've got to treat her better than that, because if for some reason they can't take out Merida and they're going to be punished by her ability, that could happen. But again, that's kind of best case scenario. So for me, it's slightly better than your 4/6 vanilla. The question is, would I rather the 1 lore lost I think there's an argument to be made for both. I think all three of these, Lord MacGuffin, the Witch, and Merida, is just going to depend on your deck. Please don't shift this. This is definitely not worth the shift. Louisa absolutely can be, depending on what your opponent's got exerted. Merida, most definitely not. I can't think of a situation where she's going to be worth shifting, losing a card for. So as a result, I've got her, again, kind of in that mostly vanilla territory. I'm going to put her below the Witch, but kind of all in that vicinity. All right, Zeus, Defiant God, Inkable, 5/5/3 lore. This character enters play with 4 damage. Obviously, you've got the move damage and all that. You know, this pairs brilliantly with Louisa. You can move all 4 over at once and then move it on to an opponent's character. But that is really the only card in this set that's going to significantly be able to deal with this 4 damage. Otherwise, you're kind of looking to chip off one at a time. So Louisa being a legendary, Zeus is effectively a 5/1/3 lore for 5, which is awful. It's still a 3 lore character, so it's a high D, but it's still a D. Okay, Preston Whetmore. He is an expedition financier. Inkable, 4/6/2 lore. When you play this character, you may put the top 2 cards of your deck into your discard. So for the cards that trigger off this, again, my favorite one is Swarm, which needs to have that happen the turn that you're playing it, which would necessitate 8 ink for this to happen. So it's just not likely to happen. You know, yeah, the triggers just don't matter enough for this to be worth it. So again, this is effectively a vanilla for me. So I think I'd rather Dolores at this point. And it's almost certainly going to drop into the D+ territory. Dashpar, Uninkable, 6/5/1 lore Rush. It is a Maui, hero to all, but uninkable, but not reckless. Gets to quest for 1. Not only does it get to quest for 1, but it doesn't have to challenge. And that's a pretty big deal in Limited when we're dealing with a lot of bodies and your opponent can effectively force you to challenge into a really weak character. It's really great that you don't have to challenge with Dash. You can look for those opportunities. So I've mentioned before, I love Rush. I think it's my 3rd favorite kind of keyword, my 4th favorite ability if you count good card draw as an ability. You know, that good card draw, evasive, bodyguard, Rush is kind of the order of my favorite abilities. So if you want to count keywords, it's evasive, bodyguard, then Rush. However, Rush is one that, for me, I really need to have a decent amount of willpower and strength as well, right? Like, we've had some, like, really weak Rushes before. It's like, oh, 1/3 Rush. What am I doing with that? So, kind of needs both, but it needs a decent amount of willpower, decent amount of strength. So I love bodies like this because I am almost certainly going to be able to 2-for-1 with Dash. I'm going to be challenging into their 3-drop 4/4 or their 4-drop 4/5, and then living to tell the tale. And sure, they're going to run back in with their 2-drop, but I'll take it. Any 2-for-1 card advantage, I'm very happy for. I mentioned ad nauseum, I know I say it a lot, but that War of Attrition really matters. I repeat myself because I know that not all of you that watch all the time are seeing this, that we have a lot of new audience. So if you're new, I've talked about this War of Attrition many times before. We run out of cards in Limited, right? We get to the point where I'm top decking, you're top decking. So the more that we can avoid that, the further away from that we can get, the more I can get card advantage on my opponent, the more likely I am to win. Right? So when you have to invest 2 cards to, deal with Dash, I've, challenged one proactively and then you've challenged back. That's 2 cards of yours to 1 of my card. If we're drawing cards at relatively the same rate, that means I'm going to get an advantage. Eventually, I'm going to have characters on my board. You are not, or I'm going to have substantially more than you have. And that's the path to victory there, right? He is uninkable, so you have to factor that in, but this is one of those cards that I feel like if you're going to invest in any uninkable, this is one of your top priorities. Obviously, as we've established in the 4-drops, Babyface might be the top uninkable priority, but this is pretty close. And uncommon, I'm very happy with Dash. Yes, obviously the bodies have gotten bigger since Maui Hero to All, but I think trading off the Reckless is worth it, and I still think there's plenty of decent-sized bodies that I'm going to take out with this and live to tell the tale. So I'm very happy with Dash. I think I'd probably even have him above Maleficent and Mrs. Incredible. I think I've got him in that mid-B territory and kind of edging on B+, just like our evasive series. Never going to pass a 2-lore evasive quester. Not in my books, but I think he's quite good. All right, Mr. Incredible, super strong, inkable, 6/4, 1 lore, shift 3. This character gets +2 strength for each other character you have in play. You don't need more than 6, but sure. And whenever one of your super characters challenges another character, draw a card. This is such a great payoff. I've mentioned it already today. I think these supers are the best synergy in Wilds Unknown. I still don't feel confident in any synergy being consistent enough to work. But as good as any are, the good quality super kind of delivery methods, the cards that set up the super synergies, and the good super payoffs, all add up to a really strong synergy. The challenge is always just density, right? There's 17 supers, 9 are common and uncommon. Of those, 6 are playable or imminently playable. And then there's, rare, super rare, and legendary, as we've seen, supers as well. You're most likely to see the commons and uncommons, so I usually just try to factor those in. But if you've got Mr. Incredible, you're definitely starting to prioritize supers higher because they're good on their own, or at least a decent chunk of them are good on their own, so it's never going to hurt you to prioritize them. And then the payoff here. Being able to draw a card off any challenge. It does not have to be banishing a challenge. It does not have to be banished in a challenge. It just has to be when one of your super characters challenges another character, draw a card. Notably, Mr. Incredible triggers himself. So even if it just read, when he challenges another character, draw a card, you'd be pretty happy paying 5 for this. The fact that any of your supers get to trigger this, so if you've got another one on the board when you play this, you're thrilled. If you somehow have 2 and you can challenge with those when you play Mr. Incredible, you're ecstatic. This is another card that you're perfectly willing to shift on. I don't think the 1-drop is as good, a 1-drop 2/2. I don't think it's as good as Louisa, but it's fine, especially in a sealed where you're kind of looking to eke out a few last playables in your deck. I think it's perfectly fine. So this is another one where I might shift. The only reason I might not want to shift is because he's so valuable that I might be looking to just leave him behind and hope I can generate value from my other supers. But there's a good chance that he might be the only one on the board, in which case expose him to that danger. Now, you definitely don't want to shift him if you can play him and your 2/2 can favorably challenge in, right? Don't shift him, play him, challenge your 2/2 into something. If it can do so favorably, like if it can take something out and draw a card, oh, now we're talking, right? But yeah, there's just tons of great supers in there. I don't think it's as strong as Louisa just because I don't think you're reliably going to have any other supers in play. So I'm kind of treating him in this rating relative to Louisa as if he's doing this on his own, right? And it's just when he challenges another character, you get to draw a card. But certainly, if you've got any sort of density, if you've got 4 or 5 supers in your deck, then I would say that bumps him above Louisa. And if you've got more than that, and again, good supers that are good on their own, don't just include them because they say super, right? But if you've got 4 or 5 good supers in your deck, besides Mr. Incredible, bump him up above Louisa. And if you've got more than that, you're just laughing, absolutely laughing. All right. Flora, Strong-Willed Fairy, Inkable, 4/5/2 lore. When you play this character, your other characters gain resist +1 until the start of your next turn. That's relevant. It's not irrelevant. It's just not super impactful. I think there's going to be situations where you play this and it's like, my opponent doesn't have any characters to exert, and this is kind of my only 5-drop play, so I'm just going to play it. Or, maybe the resist matters on one of my characters, but probably not all of the potential challenges I can make. There's going to be blowouts with this, but I think on the whole it's just going to be, again, maybe slightly better than vanilla. So as a result, it's slightly better than a 4 or 5 vanilla. Maybe not slightly, maybe a little bit better than slightly, because I don't really want to put it around or below these ones. I think I've got it above them, not to the level of Woody yet, but I think I've got it above, my 4/6s and my 5/5 quasi vanillas. I think it's going to be stronger than that, but I don't think much more. All right, Bruno Madrigal is the Oasis Oracle. Inkable, 4/5/1 lore. Once during your turn, whenever you remove damage from one of your characters, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one into your hand and the other on the bottom of your deck. Whenever this character quests, you may remove all damage from chosen character. So, Once during your turn, whenever you remove damage from one of your characters, you basically get to play Develop Your Brain. So you get to draw a card notably, right? One of them goes in your hand. And he can remove damage. So this is where he is the payoff for the Madrigal synergy, but notably he doesn't need any other Madrigals to trigger it. He triggers it himself. All he's asking you to do is get any damage on one of your other characters. You've got any damage on one of your other characters, you quest with him, you remove that damage, and you get to look at the top 2 cards of your deck and put one in your hand. That's a pretty easy hoop to jump through. So, I would like to treat this on rating as a inkable 4/5, 1 lore, that 1 turn later he gets to remove damage from one of your characters and play Develop Your Brain. All of that's pretty good, right? He's not going to be far removed from, and potentially better than, Pete from the last set. Pete was a 5/5 that got Develop Your Brain, but you had to pay 1 to boost him, so it was effectively a 6 cost 5/5 to Develop Your Brain. And really the first time it was just draw a card. You probably weren't boosting more than once. And chances are your opponent removed it because it's a very strong card, so you weren't getting it more than once, right? This gets Develop Your Brain. It also gets to heal a character in the process. It's a 4/5, but it only costs 5. I think this is probably better than Pete from the last set. There was boost synergies. There was things to love about Pete. But again, Pete was in a better set. I think relative to Pete, if this was in the last set, I might rate it above Pete or right around there. In this set, I think it rates better than I had Pete rated at last set, which I had Pete at a B+. Don't quote me on that, but feel free to call me out in the comments. I think Bruno's probably an A-. In this set, as weak as everything is, I definitely have him over my 2 lore evasives, especially since there's so many answers and so many strong evasives to compete with my own in this set. I think Bruno's probably in the A- territory. Kashkim, Wise King, Inkable, 4/6, 2 lore. At the end of your turn, if 2 or more cards were put into your discard this turn, you may put the top card of your deck into your Inkwell face down. By the time you play this, unless you have means to trigger it on the turn that you play him, after that it's too late. You really only want to be inking up to 6. So if you only want to be inking up to 6, by the next turn, I already want to have that ink, right? Chances are I'm looking to play a 6-drop at that point, right? So I can't wait for... it's because it is at the end of your turn. I was going to say it's not exerted, but it's at the end of your turn, so it might as well be exerted, right? So really the only time this is going to be good is if you can trigger him on the turn he comes into play. And good is even a bit of a stretch. You're effectively drawing 1 card, which is good, but for a lot of hoops to jump through. With that many hoops to jump through, and not even necessitating going up to 6, maybe I don't have a 6-drop in my hand worth playing. Chances are I want to be up at 6 ink, because it's very unlikely you're not going to have at least some 6-drops in your deck that you want to play. I don't think he's particularly good. I think he's above a vanilla. Again, we've got a lot of these that are kind of vanilla plus, right? Not enough to like rank them, a whole rank higher, but vanilla plus. Relative to the rest of these, I think I have them below Flora. I think I probably even have them below more Lord MacGuffin. Again, the uninkable, just because there's not... The density of quality uninkables in this set are lower than the last 2 sets, so I'm not as much at risk there. But Lord MacGuffin, obviously, if you're at risk with uninkables, drop him out, drop him down. But just as a 5-drop to 5-drop and what they do respective to each other, I would have Lord MacGuffin above. I would just obviously factor in the uninkable if I think it matters at that point. Okay, what else can I do? Uninkable, action, song. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck, put one into your hand and the other into your inkwell face down. If a character sang the song, your characters gain ward until the start of your next turn. So it is how far I'll go, but for 5, and potentially ward, which doesn't matter really in limited. Again, it doesn't not matter, it's just very unlikely to matter, right? The chances are that your opponent has an action that they even want to play or has an ability that they even want to trigger that would choose one of your characters is relatively unlikely, but not nothing, right? Ward, I'll take ward over nothing. How Far I'll Go, I think, was relatively usable as a 4-cost song. by the time you get to 5, I don't really want to be singing with my 5-cost characters because there's a good chance that they're 2 lore characters. This is an F for me. Okay. Escape plan. Uninkable action. You can't play this action unless 2 or more cards were put into your discard this turn. Each player chooses 2 of their characters and puts them in their inkwell face down exerted. This is such an F. Such an F. Oh my goodness. Lord Dingwall. Inkable, 5/6/1 lore. This character may enter play exerted to give chosen character challenger +3 this turn. So this is the old vanilla stat line, but you may have it enter play exerted to give challenger +3. It's a big enough body that on 5, having it enter play exerted probably isn't going to matter. Chances are they're not going to be able to take it out, or at least not favorably. Obviously, you wouldn't put it into play exerted if it is going to be taken out favorably. So I think you're probably safe to assume that the enter play exerted probably isn't going to matter too much. Giving challenger +3, fine. I'm not a huge believer in one-time strength buffs, but certainly it could be relevant. I've had plenty of times where it's relevant. I'm just not overly excited about it. It's not this like game-breaking ability. So as such, the fact that it's understated relative to its cost at this point, right? It's 2 pips down. So basically you're paying 1 ink, right? Because I mentioned, 1 ink is about equivalent to 2 stat pips, right? So you're effectively paying 1 ink for the ability to both have to play him exerted to gain the challenger +3. That's not really worth an ink, so it doesn't rise anywhere near the kind of current vanilla staples. So as a result, I'd have him again kind of in this mid-C territory. So first of all, I think it's definitely time to drop down Preston and maybe even Dolores here. Yeah, I think I'm willing to drop down Dolores too, because I know Gizmo Duck's going to be up here as well. Yeah, I think Lord Dingwall is probably in this range here. I think the fact that he's inkable, a little bit more resilient stat line, willpower for having something that you have to enter play exerted, right? Lord MacGuffin's body, if it didn't have to enter play exerted, I'd rather the 6/4/2 lore than the 5/6/1 lore. But the fact that to trigger it, you have to enter play exerted, the 4 willpower is problematic. So I think Lord Dingwall is probably better on the whole. But they're, again, effectively from Lord Dingwall all the way down to, certainly to the Witch. I think Lord Dingwall to the Witch are all pretty much interchangeable. And then I think Merida, Dolores, and Preston are all pretty interchangeable. Okay, second to last, we've got Merida. I'm sorry, you all. She is an uninkable 3/5/2 lore. When you play this character, you may return an action card named 3 arrows from your discard to your hand. Whenever one of your actions deals damage to an opposing character, deal 2 damage to that character. So there is one action that I can recall, pretty sure I'm correct here, that deals damage in the set, and it is 3 arrows. So unless you have 3 arrows with her, she is a uninkable 3/5/2 lore. Yeah, if you've got 3 arrows, you're going to want to play it, but chances are at most you have 1. And the likelihood of them lining up together, very unlikely. If you manage to get this off, obviously dealing 4 to something and 3 to something else, fantastic. But just so unlikely that she is most definitely an F, and I am sorry. I mean, she's still a 3/5/2 lore, so I'll put her at the top of F. I'm sorry. Sorry, all. Gizmo Duck, Duckburg Defender, inkable, 5/4/2 lore, resist +1. While you have no cards in your hand, opponents can play actions with cost 4 or more. So irrelevant. So irrelevant. So resist +1 is the only ability that he has. So I've already established our 5/5/2 lores vanilla stat line is kind of in that C-D+ territory. Resist +1 is slightly better, ever so slightly better than 1 willpower. But again, not by a significant margin. So once again, we effectively have another kind of vanilla plus. It's slightly better than vanilla, but not by a significant margin. Versus our 6/6 resist 1. The higher the willpower, the more the resist 1 matters. Because the more likelihood it's going to take 2 characters to challenge in, which means you're subtracting 1 damage from each of them, which means 2 characters might not even be enough for our 6 willpower, our fat cat, that we'll see tomorrow. So, all being told, again, he's in that kind of vanilla plus territory. Where do I think he lands on here? He is, ironically enough, a super. Bet you didn't think you were getting a non-incredible super in this set, but here he is. So he trucks with Mr. Incredible for what that's worth with the legendary, and he's a rare. But I feel like, on the whole, I'm going to get more use out of Lord Dingwall there. Lord MacGuffin, again, that 4 willpower I don't love. He is uninkable as well. So I think Gizmoduck probably resides around there. And I think Meriduck can probably drop down as well. I think that's a clean. We've got the 3 here in Ds that are like barely above vanilla. And then we've got the 5 here that are a decent amount above vanilla, but not by much. And Flora kind of a hair above that as well. Yeah, I think this is both a balanced tier list and a pretty accurate one as well. So here we are. We've got 3 A's finally. So that gives us 4 A's for the set as a whole. And we've been through 1 through 5. And 3 of them are at the 5 cost. But I'm pretty happy with that. Louisa and Mr. Incredible, absolutely. Bruno, debatable. You could say B+, or you could say A-. But I think just given the set, I think it bumps him up into the A- territory. And pretty balanced. I think Woody's going to be the most contentious. I think, shout it out in the comments if you agree. I think Woody's going to be the most contentious, but I think realistically he's, a 5 cost uninkable 1/5 2-lore draw card. And, fine, but nothing to get excited about. Thank you again so much for watching these videos, for sharing them out, for everything that you do, for subscribing. I've got a goal of subscribers, but I don't really care to mention it because, again, it's not about hitting a certain tier. It's just about getting more communication out there. The more subscribers we have, the more this goes around YouTube, the more likely that people are seeing it, the more people we get interested in, confident in, loving, and playing Limited. So please do subscribe, but can you tell I'm uncomfortable having this conversation? I just don't really want to push it, but I know I need to, right? For the sake of getting the word of Limited out there. There's not many people fighting that good fight. But though, may I say, hey, you've stuck around this long. Let me just say, this is the most content I've seen around Limited of any set so far. So obviously we're building momentum. We've got a lot more. If you follow me on Twitter, on X, I've been sharing out everything that I've seen in terms of people creating content for Limited. We had a quartet of Garrick and JDZ and Katie, Lore Keeper Zin, and Rebecca Quests, doing a sealed event. They each got their pre-release kit ahead of time. Nothing for me, Ravensburger. Just to create content, just to create Limited content for you. But they had a match together. They played each other on webcam. Amazing. We have the Stuggly Duckling that's on episode 5 of their Limited series, sharing out their thoughts on Limited last set and this set. We've got Nav's Nerd Corner I mentioned. So more and more we're seeing the momentum, and I'm getting so excited for it. Lorcana Justice from the UK shared out, I think you are from the UK, apologies if you're not, shared out some Limited content. So just love seeing the momentum that we're building. So let's keep it going. Please do what you can to contribute to it, and I appreciate you so much for it. We've got our 6+ drops tomorrow. We've got Allie's Sweet, that's coming to join me. So excited to have her. My first guest from across the ocean. So that's very exciting. My first guest outside of North America. So very, very cool. And obviously great personality. She's amazing. And she's got a lot of great takes on Limited. So I hope you're looking forward to it. It has already been recorded, so I know it's going to happen this time. I appreciate you all, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.